tell you, Emma. I just need time to think.
But you can't just leave.
You keep dating the exact same person in different bodies. Different name, different face, but 6 months down the line, you're trapped in the exact same cycle of manipulation, emotional exhaustion, and begging for the bare minimum. You probably think you just have terrible luck. But here is the brutal, uncomfortable truth. You're actively, subconsciously, sending out a psychological signal that acts as a massive green light for narcissists, and your empathy is the bait. You're stuck in a hidden psychological trap called repetition compulsion. Until you rewrite your internal attraction blueprint, you will always be a magnet for emotional vampires. But there is one specific, highly counterintuitive boundary trick that instantly makes you completely invisible to toxic people. And once you deploy it, the cycle breaks permanently.
I lost it all, Emma. Everything I worked for, gone in an instant.
Oh, Ryan.
How could you say that right after I told you what happened? You never listen.
Let's look at your track record. It always starts the exact same way. The chemistry is explosive. They're charming, attentive, and they seem to understand you on a level nobody else ever has. You think, finally I found someone who gets it. But then, the mask slips. The late-night anxiety returns. You start overanalyzing their texts, walking on eggshells, and twisting yourself into knots trying to keep them happy. You pour all your emotional energy into fixing the relationship, believing that if you just love them hard enough, are patient enough, or communicate clearly enough, they will revert back to the person they were in month 1. But they don't. And you're left staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. completely drained, wondering, is there a sign on my forehead that says, please take advantage of me? You aren't cursed, and you aren't stupid. You're caught in the grip of repetition compulsion. Your brain is a highly efficient pattern recognition machine. If your early life, whether in childhood or a formative past relationship, taught you that love equals chaos, inconsistency, or having to constantly earn your worth, your subconscious mind mapped that out as your baseline for connection. When you meet a genuinely healthy, consistent person, your nervous system actually gets bored. It registers their peace and stability as a lack of chemistry. You aren't drawn to toxic people because you want to suffer. You're drawn to them because their specific brand of dysfunction feels profoundly, dangerously familiar. It feels like home. But here is where almost every self-help book and dating coach gets it completely wrong. You've probably been told that narcissists and manipulators prey on the weak, the insecure and the broken. That is a massive lie. Toxic people do not want a weak partner. They want a premium, high-grade energy source. They are actually hunting for your best qualities, your extreme resilience, your boundless compassion, and your high capacity for forgiveness. They don't target your weakness. They target your absolute greatest strengths. They just look for the one fatal flaw in how you protect them. That fatal flaw? It's your lack of an emotional bouncer. You have an open-door policy for your empathy. Toxic people know this, but they don't just guess, they test it. Very early on, usually within the first few dates, they will drop a carefully crafted sob story. A crazy ex, a tragic misunderstanding at work, a tale where they are the absolute helpless victim. This is their radar ping. If you lean in, validate their victimhood, and immediately try to fix it, you just lit up on their dashboard like a Vegas casino. You passed their test. But passing their test means failing yours. Because what happens next is how the trap actually snaps shut. It's called intermittent reinforcement. Once they know you're hooked, they start pulling away, just a little at first. A delayed text, a cold shoulder, a sudden unexplained shift in tone. Panic sets in. You double your efforts, pouring in more love, more patience, and more understanding just to get back to that initial high. And suddenly, they reward you. They give you a tiny breadcrumb of that amazing person you met on day 1. Your brain floods with dopamine. You aren't experiencing deep love. You're experiencing a trauma bond. It is the exact same neurochemical mechanism that keeps a gambler chained to a losing slot machine. But you don't call it an addiction. You use one very specific, highly dangerous phrase to justify staying. I know who they really are underneath it all. You fall in love with their potential instead of their reality. You become the manager of their emotional growth, working overtime for a promotion you are never going to get. You carry the entire emotional weight of the relationship, completely convinced that your love can heal their brokenness. It can't. It won't. They don't want to be healed. They want to be accommodated. So how do you rip the plug out of this machine? You stop being a good supply. You have to understand that a manipulator's biggest fear isn't you leaving. It's you becoming entirely unresponsive to their chaos. This brings us to the counterintuitive trick I promised you, the ultimate psychological defense mechanism that instantly makes you invisible to emotional vampires. It's called radical neutrality. And executing it requires you to break the number one rule you were taught about being a good partner. You were taught that a good partner is always deeply empathetic, fiercely supportive, and unconditionally emotionally available. Radical neutrality requires you to completely shatter that belief. When a toxic person deploys their chaos, whether it is a sudden silent treatment, an unprovoked accusation, or a deliberately manufactured crisis, your instinct is to care. You want to explain, defend, or soothe. Radical neutrality is the conscious, disciplined act of doing absolutely nothing. You do not match their heightened emotion. You do not offer a panicked apology for something you didn't do. You do not twist yourself into knots trying to decode their silence. You simply observe their behavior without absorbing it. You become an emotional brick wall. You respond to their frantic provocations with flat, utterly uninteresting statements like, "I understand you feel that way," or "Let me know when you're ready to talk calmly." This is the ultimate glitch in their matrix. Emotional vampires do not actually care if your reaction is positive or negative. A screaming match feeds them just as much as a tearful apology. They just need to know they have the power to control your emotional thermostat. When you remove your reaction, you cut their oxygen supply. To a manipulator, an unresponsive, unbothered target is completely useless. They will suddenly find you profoundly boring. They will pack up their drama and leave to find an easier source of supply, effectively filtering themselves out of your life without you having to lift a finger. This is how you finally rewrite your internal attraction blueprint. You stop confusing nervous system anxiety with romantic chemistry. You stop treating your massive capacity for love as a rehabilitation center for emotionally bankrupt people. Your empathy is a rare, beautiful currency, but you have been spending it in a rigged casino. It is time to cash out. The moment you deploy radical neutrality, the heavy fog of the trauma bond lifts. You realize that you never needed to earn love by being a human sponge for someone else's misery. True, healthy love does not require you to constantly audition for your worth, and it never asks you to sacrifice your peace just to keep the peace. By building this invisible boundary, you aren't just protecting your energy. You're finally creating the space to attract a connection that is safe, consistent, and remarkably peaceful.
I lost it all, Emma. Everything I worked for, gone in an instant.
Oh, Ryan.
I don't know what to tell you, Emma. I just need time to think.
But you can't just leave like this. What about everything we...
That space you are finally creating is sacred. But once you clear out the emotional vampires, your nervous system, which is still conditioned to survive in chaos, might actually try to trick you into feeling bored by a healthy, consistent partner. You have to actively rewire what you're attracted to before another manipulator slips under your radar. I made an entire video breaking down the exact subtle red flags covert manipulators use to quietly test your boundaries before you even realize you're being played. It is right there on your screen. Click it right now so you can spot their traps early and never let them inside your invisible boundary in the first place. And if you are ready to permanently stop being a human sponge and finally rebuild your peace, hit subscribe. We are cashing out of that rigged casino together.
I don't know what to tell you, Emma. I just need time to think.
But you can't just leave like this. What about everything...